Hey, what's up? I hope you can hear me. I'm going to Walmart. I figured this would just be a funny time to record something. So, it's I've been thinking a little bit about living in the past. Just like in my life experience, I have good reason to want to just wallow, in what once was and things like that. But for me, at least, I've done it before, but it just there comes a time where it doesn't make sense anymore. You're just gonna torture yourself over things that you can't change anymore, and you can. So I have a friend who is just really controlled at all times by just a couple week spans of her life, and she'll revisit them at all times, and she can make sense of them all she wants. She can be like, well, I did this and this was good, right? Or I learned this lesson. This guy wasn't treating me well. I learned this lesson. I stood up for myself and that was good. That's good, but at some point you have to stop thinking about it. You can't keep revisiting it. No matter how many times or how many positive conclusions you draw from something, you cannot just revisit it and let your mind live there for your entire life, right? Because then you're miserable over a week, 2 weeks of your life. You're going to be miserable for months at a time, and then you're going to find something new, right? Then you'll experience a new week that will then haunt you, and you'll live in the moment for that week, right? Everything will feel real again. And then you're just back to square one, mulling over the past, right? And you're revisiting now an additional week. It sounds really mean to say shit like that, but when you watch somebody else do it, it can become so obvious. And I can talk a little bit about I completely understand why somebody would want to do that. In high school, when I was a senior, I dated this girl for a year, and she was Muslim. And if you know anything, Muslim girls are not allowed to date anybody unless their parents have selected them. But you typically wouldn't unless you're gonna get married, right? And your parents will approve of somebody you should date if you want to get married, but you wouldn't get married if you're a girl who's going to go to college or something like that. First you would go to college, and then you would get a degree, start your job, things like that, and then you would look for marriage. So my ex-girlfriend was going to college, and I'm not Muslim, by the way. So, and her parents ended up actually, they didn't know anything about it really, and we had a great time. I would do all sorts of ridiculous things. I could tell a million stories about that. Sneaking into her house when they were gone, sneaking out when they came home unexpectedly, shit like that. Just doing everything. Well, one night I had us both sneak out. It was in April. We both snuck out. We went to a park that we both live by. And her mom put it together that she snuck out, and she flipped out on her, all this stuff. Her parents were divorced, and then her father, who's been living in Turkey for a few years, says she should come live with me and go to school in Turkey. So and that news was delivered to me 2 months later, that she was going to be going to Turkey, right? And it just killed us, you know what I mean? It just it was the most terrible thing ever. Imagine getting some news like that. I woke up to it because she was staying with him at the time. And, just imagine being my age. I was 18. Think about the thoughts that are going through my head. Like, I just ruined this girl's life. This girl that I love. I just completely altered her life permanently in a bad way. She was going to go to a good school in America. She wants to be a dentist. And her school, well, the one they selected in Turkey for her, had the chance of being accredited for Americans. So there was a possibility, like they were a candidate school to be selected to be American accredited. If you know what that means that at some point she would be able to come home and practice as a dentist in America. But that, everything looked so terrible. And she was there for the summer. So, I mean, it's been 2 years now. But I said goodbye to her on July 2nd. And I literally have never seen her again. And, like, there was seriously nothing wrong between me and this girl. It was just every other circumstance you could think of would just keep us apart. And we would have to find, like, the stupidest ways to work around every rule that, like, her parents would ever enforce. And, like, you can do all that. You can try your very hardest. And sometimes it doesn't matter at all. Sometimes you're not entitled to the result you want, So I continued talking to her for months. Like, I didn't want to give up. I didn't want to let go. Neither of us did. And, I went to school exactly where I planned, and she didn't. And she was in Turkey. So we were dealing with this, like, time zone difference. And I failed to mention this, but her dad was, like, suspicious of her that she was talking to me, so we couldn't text and we couldn't call after a certain point. So my only form of communication with this girl was email for months, right? And we made it work. We tried our very best. And then just after a few months, you can't just go on like that, It doesn't matter how hard you try. It doesn't matter how hard you want it. It doesn't even matter, like, if everything is good between you, because it was for us. You're not entitled to anything, And so that's the mindset that you have to have, or that I've had to have. And once you, like, kind of think about that, you can look back and see that everything you ever had was always a bonus, right? Because the neutral state is just nothing. So I got to experience a year of the most emotional. It was exciting at times. It was terrifying at others. It was really frustrating. And it was also some of the, like, it was like the best feeling in the world sometimes, to like cheat death, like to sneak out of a girl's house once her parents are home, like I walked in plain view of her stepdad and he didn't see me because he was watching TV. Like, those are just moments, it's just really special. So I would never want to discount how I felt. I would never, like, regret anything I did. I would never have tried to set up this operation where we snuck out or whatever, but that's just a horrible decision I made, and there's nothing I can do. I was playing with fire the whole time, and I got caught. I got burned. Can I really be upset? I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew the risks. We both did. And that was a decision she made, and that was a decision I made. And now I want to be upset about how it all turned out. How does that make any sense? And I would do it again, because it was seriously the best time of my life. And now, 2 years removed, I still talk to this girl. Sometimes it's really hard to want to move on. I talk to her every day because that's all I care about. That's all I want, is I just wish this girl was home. But you just don't get to have it that way. And there's another slight issue where it's against her religion to marry somebody that's not a Muslim. And I wouldn't convert because I want to marry her. That doesn't make any sense. If you want to convert, you need to believe, right? So yeah, she would, in her faith, she would be going to hell, and so would all of our kids. So it's how could you really do that to somebody? How could you let somebody decide to cast themselves into hell, But yeah, this is something that I feel all these things, and I've thought about it so much, and I've lived it, and I don't think about it. This is the most important thing in my life. This is the person I care the most about, and I don't think about it. I don't think about her all the time. Because what else is there to do? What does it accomplish anymore? What should I mull over any longer? Right? I talk to her and I think about her, but I don't think about how bad I want her back, how bad I want her to come home, how perfect everything was, right? And there are other ways that this affects me. I'm not really that open to dating anybody unless they're fucking perfect, and maybe my standards are too high because I don't want to, maybe accept that it's time or whatever. But nothing gets done anymore by living in the past, right? I would just get left behind. And I was left behind for a time. So, I have an extreme case of this where I don't really have a choice, what am I going to do? I guess my friend has, these people, she sees them sometimes, So maybe it's a little different, right? She gets to interact with these things from her past. Whoa. But yeah, you really just can't let what once was be only in your head, It's all about the way you think about it and thinking about it at all. I had my time where I was beating myself up, and then once you see that you really didn't have to have anything at all, and that whatever you were given, whatever you're so upset about losing, to have anything was so much more special, that what are you really upset about? You had your time. And if that's all that you'll ever get, just be grateful that you had anything. So, those are just my thoughts. I'll have to cut this up and see how it all comes together. Maybe I'll add something else or try to make everything make more sense. I just want to be as authentic as possible. And I figured it'd be much easier if I just got in the car and talked. So, yeah. But I'm going to go buy some deli meat and some bread. And I'm going to get all my stuff ready so I can make sandwiches for work tomorrow. So, yeah. I'll talk to you. Bye. Hey, I'm back. I bought my shit. And I thought I owed a little explanation why I'm like so... Because I'm kind of harping on my friend, right? You know, you guys don't really understand because you don't hang around with her. So basically what I was trying to say is that she's like really bothered by these things, and she'll like, when I ask her about it, like, she'll get upset. She'll be like, I just care so much. Why do I care so much? And sorry, I'm a little out of breath. She cares so much because she thinks about it all the time. And it's clear she thinks about it all the time because basically every 15 minutes she'll find a way to mention the existence of one of these things that upsets her. It'll be like, do you think this guy that stopped talking to me a year ago would hit me up on my birthday? It's like, I understand it's a joke, and it is kind of funny. Like, I laugh. It's funny to joke about things like that, but is it helping you, Like, you might think saying something like that, like, clearly shows, like, she's over it, but just, like, living in that space, like, always taking your mind back to a time that made you upset, to something that's making you upset. If you're constantly doing that, I don't know if you should joke about it, because, like, you're just allowing yourself to do it, and you really ultimately control exactly this. I wouldn't say you control the state of your mind more often than not. Sometimes, like, things outside of your control are gonna affect you, right? You should understand that there is a connection between your conscious and subconscious mind, and you need to be doing things with your conscious mind to try to control, your subconscious mind. So when you constantly bring things up, it reinforces in your head that these things bother you, that they are still present when they're not affecting you anymore, right? They're physically not affecting you anymore, but they will mentally when you give them so much weight in your head. So, yeah, and it's kind of, I don't know, I'm being a little preachy or whatever, but I just feel really strongly about it because I've, like, all things considered, I feel like I've experienced something that a lot of people would, like, really feel a lot of regret over. And I do, but, you have to take responsibility for yourself, right? I mean, how would she feel if, like, the rest of my life was just a complete fucking failure? How would I feel? I still owe it to myself to do everything I can to live a good life, right? So, I don't know if there's much else for me to say right now. I'm sure this is going to all come out a lot differently, and I still don't know exactly what I want to put as, like, the visuals for the background for this video, so I'm going to try some shit out. I've been playing a lot of chess, so maybe I'll put some chess up, and if I somehow fucking know you from real life and you recognize my username and you can link that back to me, dude, fair play, whatever. You should tell me about it. It's a little embarrassing, but it doesn't hurt to be honest, I guess. So, yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, later.